So there was some pretty big news about a week ago in regards to what's coming with Wrath of the Lich King Classic. And it was something that was alluded to when I spoke to Brian, what was now about 2 months ago or so in our interview, when I believe I did ask the question, hey, Brian, are we getting any fresh servers? And he gave me a hard maybe. Yeah, could be something we'll look into. We'll let you know. And so here we are around about this time, and they did indeed announce fresh Wrath of the Lich King Classic servers. This is something that people have been clamoring for some time now, ever since TBC was announced. Hey, Blizzard, have you considered doing fresh? Hey, these servers, some of them, a lot of them kind of in a weird spot with the economy and everything. Would you consider fresh? And here we are. It's being done. So you would think that it would be just a waterfall of praise and applause and thank you, Blizzard. This is awesome. It's going to be so much fun. And there was some of that initially. However, when we kind of read the fine print on the announcement, a lot of that applause turned into either quizzical head scratching or just straight out anger. We're going to break down the whole announcement and kind of what the implications are for the future of these, new coming fresh servers. And in doing so, I'm so happy to be joined by Manny. Manny, mate, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to talk about this. Like you said, really exciting that they're announcing fresh servers, but there are some key points to break down here for sure that we need to get into.
Definitely. And joining Manny, I love having this stream, this kind of room where I can just crash tackle people and drag them in, on a phone call to talk WoW. And we got our old friend Duranosaur in here as well, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'm currently tied up in Josh's basement, being forced to do a podcast.
Blinking many, many times to show that he's in distress.
Yes.
Mate, I really appreciate it. I did put a bit of the pressure on, and you're so gracious in saying that you were happy to talk about this one. But look, like I mentioned, guys, there's going to be some positives and some negatives to talk about. But before we kind of get into the heavy part of it, let's just go with the light and general breakdown. I'd just be interested to find out from you guys, what were your initial reactions to this one? Was there any form of surprise or shock at all? Or is this just basically something that was destined to come and came a little bit maybe late, but better late than never? Manny, I'll start with you.
I was quite surprised. They kind of I thought there was a chance they would do it with TBC, and when they didn't do it with TBC and they introduced the boost, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. I thought there was no chance they'd do it for Wrath as well. Um, like they said in their blue post, they're not introducing the boost originally, so I figured that there's too much boost money to be made with fresh players joining Wrath for them to do fresh servers. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see it. I think it's a fantastic idea, minus some of the details.
Joanna, what was your initial response?
I have to echo Manny because I think when I first talked about it with anybody, that was my first thought was, man, they didn't do it for TBC. I am incredibly surprised that they did it for Wrath because I know there were tons of people who wanted it for TBC. Content creators were like clamoring for it even back then. So I kind of wrote it off. I didn't think it was ever going to be a thing. And when they announced it, I got excited about it because I do think that it is really good. I think that it does a lot for players that, have not been playing the game recently, and also for even some players who have been playing like TBC throughout the whole thing. There are, I think, a lot of people who want to be able to do this. And like, I don't know, fresh starts are always fun. And it was always seemed to me like they have like no reason not to try it, right? And we'll probably get into this later, like what's going to eventually happen with these servers, what could happen with them, good or bad. But like, why not have like a couple fresh realms in each region? It just seemed like a no-brainer.
Couple of points there that I want to hit on that you've brought up, Joanna, in terms of who is this for, and it's a no brainer, as you say. It's an easy decision. A lot of people like a fresh server, but just targeting who we're looking at for a demographic for this one. There's two crowds in my opinion, and as you say, there's the the current players who are already involved in the game, who just enjoy a fresh start, who are either disgruntled with their economies and the way in which bots and all the mayhem has affected the auction house and whatnot, and just the amount of liquid gold floating around from player to player in the economy on a server to server basis. So there's those people who might want to hit the eject button and go and start on it, and are happy to walk away from a character with hundreds or thousands of hours in it and start again. Then there's also the crowd of current player who might not be disgruntled with their server's economy, but just are so infatuated with the concept of fresh and starting over and, being, one of the rats at the start of the rat race as the gates are lifted and get to go and flourish and have fun. There's that crowd too. Then there's the sort of like the other crowd, which you very importantly mentioned, which we have to, in my mind, tell me if I'm crazy, guys. I'm like, this is probably the primary reason these fresh Wrath Realms have been announced is the new player. These, I fully expect Wrath of the Lich King Classic to be pretty popular. I don't think, that's probably a euphemism. I don't expect it to be as popular as Classic was when we started. I do expect it to be more popular than TBC Classic was. And so with all the Wrath babies that might be coming back and being like, I remember Wrath, I want to come back and live out my glory days now. You guys did that with Classic, I'm going to do it with Wrath. You need a space where those new players can drop into and basically not feel so out of the loop that it's ridiculous. These thousands of new players that'll come in and be like, everyone here has, an average of 30,000 gold and I can't afford shit and this is really weird, blah, 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 blah. Giving them a fresh start and a little place to call their own with everyone that is at the same sort of, whether you call it a disadvantage or not, as them is I think, the smart decision from Blizzard. So Manny, I'll throw it back to you and just say, like, as far as I'm concerned, these fresh realms kind of had to be done. It was almost not even a choice for Blizzard with what I expect might not be, a huge onslaught of new players, but a decent enough number to have to factor them in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the key demographic that they're targeting with this is the new players. Like they say it directly in the blue post. We expect there to be a lot of new Classic players joining us for the first time in Wrath of the Lich King. And some of them may be concerned that they'll feel behind. So with the state of the servers, anyone who's been paying any attention to the state of TBC is going to take a look at that as a new player and be like, holy shit, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can compete. I don't know if I can, even starting in the pre-patch or right now, get to a level where I can play Wrath at the same level as some of these people. So I think, yeah, you're right. It was necessary. And I'm really glad that, give them their flowers. I'm really glad that Blizzard decided to do this. It's fantastic. But the next part, or that second part of the sentence where in the blue post where they said that, and some of them may be concerned, well, they'll feel behind. That's where the problems start with the rest of this blue post. I'll leave it at that for now because I'm sure that's a follow-up at some point here.
Okay. Joanna, just to get your comment, if anything, on that, do you feel like these fresh servers were not so much a how do I say this, like like manna from heaven from Blizzard, like a gift, as opposed to just like a necessity? If we're getting a lot of new players, they fucking had to do this.
I think so. And I think it was, maybe it's something they learned from TBC even, because like maybe they were able to gain some information from TBC launch and realize that there were a significant number of maybe like new accounts were activated before TBC came out. And they saw that and thought to themselves, well, we know Wrath is going to be probably the same, if not bigger, because of its popularity back in the day. And we know that anyone who wants to come in is going to feel far behind. So maybe they had some information, maybe not. I do think that even just like in the crowds of people that I've talked to about Wrath of the Lich King, I have people who watch my stream who they stopped playing back in vanilla and they're like, oh, I'm coming back for Wrath. I just had no interest in TBC. I got bored in vanilla. I've only been interested in Wrath since they announced Classic. And I think there's a significant number of those people. And so if Blizzard has been paying attention and has any sort of data to back or to like look into this, I'm pretty sure that yes, it was a pretty easy decision for them to make.
Very good. And I love this element of the show, guys, when people want to drop in and say hello. We're joined by another caller here. Actreve, mate, back again. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you all?
Doing well, mate. Doing well. Thanks so much for putting your hand up. I saw you jump in Twitch chat and said, Josh, you fucking prick, let me in on this one. So, mate, happy to have you join. Just to weave you in really quickly here, Actreve, just as we're very, very slowly starting out with the very general stuff, have you heard anything you really wanted to comment on so far, and what was your initial reaction to this news?
My initial reaction was, I think it's going to be good, because as you said, lots of people are going to feel left behind, and maybe hordes of people are going to come in and be like, "Oh, I haven't tried Wrath, so I'll get in with my buddies. We'll go through and go from 1 to 70, or was it 80? 1 to 80, and I think it's a good idea on Blizzard's behalf. You know, they will get a lot more people coming in, but with like I've seen a lot on Reddit that once they allow faction realm transfers, then the gold situation is going to be exactly the same as every other server. People are just going to like jump over with loads of gold, and it's just going to absolutely tank the server in that regard. And it's just going to be like every other server.
We're absolutely going to get there. Don't worry. We are loading up for that spicy meatball. Mates, Joanna, if I can throw it back to you, and I see in Twitch chat a point that's been raised that I've seen in several places already. And Joanna, you and I are content creators who have touched on this topic recently. You made a great video the other day that I sat and watched, captivated with my wife as we watched you break down the history of private servers. And it was funny also waking up this morning to seeing you have a bit of discourse with Orlando back and forth on that one.
Yeah.
Who he obviously got a kick out of it too, and had a few points of extra things that he'd love to see. Look, mate, I've done some Everlook content. You've mentioned Everlook as well. It's something that is sort of buzzing behind the scenes here in Classic Land, if you will. And the comment comes up, oh, Blizzard's only doing this because they fucking got scared of Everlook. And I mostly balk at that suggestion. I don't doubt that Blizzard has definitely been made aware of the fact that you know there is a vanilla private server starting to build some buzz, and I'm sure they've got that on their radar. Personally, I don't think this is their response. I think their response is coming later in another form. But people's argument are that obviously there is, like we said, that crowd that is so obsessed with fresh. It doesn't matter if it's vanilla, TBC, or Wrath, or what have you. They just want WoW in some fucking format as a fresh server. They are just chasing the dragon that is fresh. And so they're saying this, Blizzard knows that. So Blizzard goes, huzzah, Wrath fresh, come on over, all you private server players. Do you think that argument holds any water? I'm personally, look, there might be a little bit to it, but I don't think there's much there for me. How did you feel about it, Joanna?
Yeah, I think if Blizzard was going to combat Everlook, if they even really care, which I think you could have a whole argument on whether or not they even care. But I think that if they do, it will come with their whatever they do with Season of Mastery. When this like current season ends and they start a new season, which they claimed they were going to be year-long seasons. The last one started in November. So that, makes me think that the next one will start sometime in November. And as far as I know, I've been kind of keeping track of Everlook's timeline. They haven't even announced when they're doing their like beta and they're testing stuff yet. So I would assume that if Blizzard was worried about Everlook in any way, they're thinking about, okay, what can we do with the next season of Mastery, next vanilla season that's going to draw that player base back to us instead of a private server. I don't think that the fresh Wrath has much, if anything, to do with that.
Yeah, the timing of the next season of Mastery is a really good point. Manny, actually, feel free to jump in on whatever if you've got anything to say about what I'm about to say. But yeah, it's a great point to raise, Joanna, because I initially was with you where I was like, 12-month servers, I would just presume that almost the week after the server ends with Season of Mastery, they just launch the new one. Why would you let any of that kind of energy, fade? However, in saying that, obviously the crucial point here is going to be the consideration of when Wrath launches. This is, something that Blizzard has caught some heat over in recent times in terms of cannibalizing their own products and, not being able to get out of their own way, stepping on their own feet, all the different analogies that you want to make or metaphors that you want to make. We saw a really big misstep with God, you guys will have to remind me when Shadowlands came out and stepped all over Nax, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It just destroyed Classic for a very brief sort of 2 to 3 month window there. And I would hope that many a lesson was learned from that you can't really have these big content drops anywhere near each other. So with Wrath coming, what is very much presumed to be either in September or October. My guess is still October 4. I pinned that down a couple of months ago. That was my closest to the pin guess. We'll see who gets there. It's either going to be that first week of September or that first week of October, and I don't think in my mind there's any other guess, quite frankly. But there's a big difference between the two, even though there's only 4 odd weeks separating those two choices that they've got before them. I think it has really large scale implications for Season of Mastery too, because as you said, November being the date when Season of Mastery ends, if Wrath were to launch in September, let's say, what's the first Tuesday of September? It is, I think it's September 4. September 6 is the first Tuesday of September. Games, launch on Tuesdays. That's generally how it's done. So that would give 2 months of Wrath prior to Season of Mastery 2 dropping if they decided to launch Season of Mastery 2 straight after this one ends. They've got another option before them, whereas if Wrath dropped in, like I'm guessing, the first week of October, being October 4, you could always drop Season of Mastery 2 maybe in January, mid-January or something, when, it's been about 2.5 months or so, 2 months or whatever since the server Season of Mastery 1 ended. Everyone's had a bit of time to cool off, and you come back with, like, as I'm expecting, hey, fresh vanilla, as you like it, Season of Mastery 2, go nuts. So it's a really interesting period of time coming up in terms of Blizzard announcing some big dates and whether or not they're going to get out of their own way and just kind of let these things trickle out in a nice cadence. Manny, Actreve, sorry, a bit of verbal diarrhea there. What do you guys have to say, if anything, on what I've just gone on about?
I don't think they're concerned at all about Everlook and Wrath. Season of Mastery, like, that's a good point. That might be something that they're looking at. But Wrath and Classic are very different games. You can kind of lose track of how different they are when you're playing through it as one continuous thing. But the people that are going to stick with Wrath are not going to be the people that are jumping to Everlook or jumping to the next private server. Those are the people that Blizzard is looking to recapture, are the Wrath babies. It's important to take, I think, from their perspective, to take those fresh chasers, the people that hop from fresh start to fresh start to fresh start into consideration. I think that's an important point when planning certain aspects of these fresh servers. But I don't think that's their main target demographic with these Wrath fresh start realms.
I think their idea is to cast the net as wide as they can to catch as much as they can. I think that's what they're trying to do if they do decide to release the SOM 2 shortly after Wrath, because as Manny said, they are 2 different products. They are targeting 2 different people. So they're just trying to cast their net as wide as they can, as many nets as they can.
All right, fair enough. Guys, let's get into... Sorry, go, Joanna.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really hope... I don't know if this is the case, but I feel like whenever we talk about specifically like a Blizzard launch, someone always brings up like, well, they need the good numbers for like quarter 4. And I don't know how realistic that is. I've never actually talked to someone from Blizzard and verified, like, is that why you guys always launch stuff in like in quarter 4? Is because like you're doing so, or you have a directive from someone that says you have to do it now so that we have the best numbers going into the end of the like fiscal year. I hope that's not the case, because I think that it hinders them a lot. Like what we're potentially going to see this fall and winter is like, if they are, someone at the top is pulling the strings and saying, well, any new servers have to come out between like September and December, like that just hurts them. Um, and I hope that that's not something that is going to continue to be an issue, because it would make way more sense, like you said, for them to delay Psalm till January or something. Like if Wrath does come out in October, and I hope that the teams have some flexibility in deciding those things, and it's not just shareholders or CEOs or whoever else.
Sadly, I look, in my opinion, and I am not a financial guy, everyone who listens to the show knows that, but sadly, in my opinion, I think it is and has been for a very, very, very long time absolutely dictated by those quarterly results and reports. It's one of those things where, yeah, I agree with you, Tyrannosaur, you would like to think that in a vacuum, games could just be released whenever the fuck you want and when it makes the most sense. However, when you grow as large as Blizzard has, or Activision Blizzard, I should say, I really need someone smarter than me on here saying this kind of thing, and we need Zoran or someone like that with this background. But it's not a good look to not just internally, like to the board and to the shareholders or whatever, but also to the outside world, when you don't either launch something or have something significant carrying profits through a quarter, where you kick ass, let's say in Q3, and you launched, I don't know, 2 titles or whatever, and Q3 went bananas, but then Q4, because you launched 2 products in Q3 and did nothing in Q4, looks absolutely barren, and it bottoms out, and it's like there's no growth. You're not even treading water. You just hit a fucking valley. What happened in Q4? On those sheets, it looks so bad that investors start to lose faith. They get scared. They might not know all the information about. That's totally explainable. It's fine. Just relax, guys. We launched 2 products in Q3. We've got more stuff coming. We can't launch something every quarter. Fucking relax. I wish I could say that that's how it works in the world of finance, but I don't believe it is. And I think that they've just got to keep doing what they can to manipulate the quarterly releases in a way that keeps that growth either steady or, in a very upward direction. And that is something that absolutely factors into the scheduling of video game releases. I look, guys, if I'm getting that wrong and you know much more about this than me, please feel free to correct me. I'm speaking way out of my depth on this one. That's just my general understanding. But that's why I've always pinpointed October 4, because I'm like, well, I know Diablo Immortal's coming in Q3. They've just, they're out there, shilling all their results. Oh, over 10 million downloads, over fucking, 15 million characters created. Everyone's playing Diablo Immortal. How good are we? They're on that PR trip at the moment. That's Q3 done and dusted, and all the fucking microtransactions that are coming with that, they're sorted. Now I would think that you save Wrath for Q4 so that you can again trumpet out in Q4 at the shareholders meeting. Oh, Wrath Classic. Look at all these fucking 1 million new subs. Everyone came back for it. Blah, blah, blah. That's why I've always said October 4. It's the first Tuesday of quarter 4, which to me just made the most sense financially. But, I wouldn't be shocked if it came in September, but I've just personally lent towards October. I'm rambling again, guys. We're going to get to the meat of the fresh stuff. Does anyone have anything to say on what I just said before we move on?
I think that's a pretty good assumption on your part. Also, idle curiosity, but I wonder if the Microsoft acquisition will have any impact on that kind of thing. But
well, that's still 18 months away, or maybe a little less
Yeah.
than 18 months, about 14 months away or something, isn't it?
yeah, that's just idle curiosity, like whether Microsoft's stable will make it so they can release games whenever they want, kind of thing. But yeah, we can move on to the important stuff here.
Yeah, definitely. Just real quick on that Microsoft thing. I'm glad you raised that, Manny. I just want to say one thing. The amount of people that I see already, the amount of gamers, and again, I might be wrong, but I don't think I am on this one. The amount of gamers that say, "Oh, Blizzard's making all these decisions for Microsoft. Microsoft is in there manipulating and doing all this stuff right now." And I'm like, it's my Microsoft has nothing to do with Activision Blizzard right now. Yes, the acquisition has been organized and everything. I don't think it's got the final rubber stamp from the proper authorities, but like nothing is being done by Microsoft. Microsoft has zero involvement in Activision Blizzard's decisions right now. And I sort of chuckle a little bit when I see that gamer take about like, oh, they're in there. They're working things already. But anyway, we'll move on.
Oh, it's
It'll be
hilarious.
2023.
That's
probably
right.
well into 2023 before Microsoft
That's right. Well, look,
takes
guys,
over. Yeah.
let's get to the meat of the conversation, which I've teased for too long now. There was, as I said, some relatively fine print on the announcement of Fresh Start Wrath of the Lich King Classic Realms. And this is something that boiled my blood. It might have boiled your blood as well. I really think, and we'll get into... There's two reasons why it bothered me, and I'm a bit pedantic, and the main reason, well, not the main reason, but one of the reasons that bothered me might make you guys laugh, but it's a two-folded operation here. They announced that, after at least 90 days, they will consider, basically brace yourself for transfers. After at least 90 days, they want to give the Fresh Start people at least 90 days to go nuts on an untouched, untampered realm. Then after that 90-day period, they will reassess and perhaps open the floodgates to other people joining the server from pre-existing servers. Now, this news is the part that made the whole community, that was the record scratch moment at the house party when everyone stopped and stared at Blizzard and said, what the fuck? I don't think... I'm going to very, very quickly say what I think is a summary of everyone's thoughts, which is I don't think it's proper to have any form of transfers hit a Fresh Start server. It makes no sense. It's antithetical to the point of what you're doing. Why are we doing this at all? And I fucking hate the fucking reason that Blizzard always trumpets out for this bullshit, which is, well, we just want you to be able to play with your friends. Shut the fuck up. I'm going to annihilate them on this once I let you guys have your say. But before I get there, I'll get a little less angry. Manny, let's start with you, mate. You're obviously the first one to sign up for this call. And I want to get your thoughts on when you saw this caveat, how did you feel about that news of at least 90 days, then transfers?
Yeah, that part, I looked at it. I was like, "There's no way." Like they have to realize who this server's for. In fact, they state it and the reason for it in the blue post. They say it's for new players joining who haven't played Classic before, and some of them may be concerned that they'll feel behind. Then, if you allow transfers in 90 days, those players who are just starting fresh, who haven't played Classic before, are going to be back behind again. And it's not just, I've seen it thrown around a lot, like gold. Players could bring in gold in, inflating the economy. That's obviously a huge consideration. And stuff like, gold selling companies bring in huge stocks of gold. There's ways to get around the gold cap on transfer and stuff like that as well. That's not the only thing. It's also stuff like professionals, Like if you're playing as a new Classic player and you're leveling up on a new Fresh Start realm, you're not going to have 5, 6, 7 professionals for transmutes or for your Titansteel cooldowns or whatever it is. But somebody who might level 1 character there, and then after 90 days they can transfer all these characters in, get a leg up on you. Geared alts they can transfer in. Maybe they level them up. They're already 70 in Sunwell geared on another server. They can bring them in. They can start carrying GDKPs with these characters. They can get a shitload of gold that way. They get a leg up on that Fresh Start player. Rare items, recipes, titles, mounts, stuff like that. That's all stuff that if this character has been played on Classic, like existing Classic realms, and then gets transferred to a Fresh Start server, it's going to kind of really ruin the purpose of this, this fresh start realm. You can't have someone who's pre-farmed all the reputations for the insane and then transfer in onto a fresh start realm with the title the insane. People are going to be like, oh, big deal. That ruins the person that was actually insane and it farmed all those titles on that fresh start realm. Those reputations. There's a lot of factors to this that make me just look at those transfers and be like, this can't ever happen, or it's, like you said, antithetical to the entire purpose.
All right, Joanna, Actreve, I'll throw it over to you guys. You're in trouble because there's already fucking 12 things that I want to go nuts about that Manny has just raised in his sort of opening statement there that we need to discuss. And, there's so many counterpoints that you see around the traps. Now, I agree with everything Manny just said, by the way, but you do see the counterpoints popping up around the spot as well about like, oh, well, you say that all these people are going to transfer and bring all their golds, and like Manny said, but there's gold caps. There's systems in place to stop these people fucking with the server. And then, oh, well, even if they could bring all their gold, who are these fucking players that want to leave, their mega server where everyone says it's so great for a, smaller, fresh server and work with less golds than they've got, and they'd have to give a lot up to get over there to the new server and blah, 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 blah. There's all these counterpoints that I think have really strong arguments against them, that they're quite easy to shoot down. But Joanna, I might start with you, mate, and just sort of say, before we get into all of that, maybe, focusing on, first and foremost, forgetting the 90-day part of things, just the argument over whether these fresh start servers should have a transfer option at any point in time of the server. Whether we're looking at our options now, we're going, okay, well, they've said at least 90 days. And yes, Blizzard, for your sake, I know you got, all up, in a tiff about, hey, we said at least 90 days. Can't you guys read? Trust me, I'm fucking getting to you on that one. But let's say, okay, at least 90 days, 3 months minimum, these servers will be pristine. But then what are our other options? Well, we could have said, a 3-month minimum. We could have said a 6-month minimum. We could have said a 12-month minimum, or we could have said no fucking transfers at all, ever. Duranosaur, how do you feel about all of those options? And should no transfers ever have been more heavily considered, or are you okay with transfers at some point in time, maybe not just after 3 months?
What I don't get is, you kind of brought this up. Why would anyone ever transfer to those servers? And why is that the concern at all? Like, in my mind, the concern with these servers is that they will die out just like a bunch of other servers have died out. That's like, in my mind, that's what's going to happen. If anything, they're either going to work out and people are going to like them and they're going to stick around, or they're going to die and everyone's going to go and back to the mega servers. So I don't really understand why they're ever allowing transfers to them, right? I think that if anything, I would have, like, if I had any say in it, I would say, like, never allow anyone to transfer to those servers and make it at least 90 days for people to transfer off. And otherwise, leave it be. It doesn't make any sense to me, because, like, to your point, I don't know of anybody realistically that is transferring from the current mega servers. Like, if you're on a Faralina or a Benediction or a Firemaw, that's saying to themselves, well, I've got all this stuff, I've got this gold, all these resources. Why don't I transfer to one of these, like, smaller, deader servers? Because I might have more fun there. Like, unless you have friends, unless you have, like, a community that's there for some reason, you're not doing that.
Well,
So why
that's kind of what.
even...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's kind of why I mentioned the stuff like profession alts and rare items, mounts, enchant, stuff like that. I'm more concerned about the player that starts on the fresh realm. They have a blast. Maybe it's an alt to start. They're like, whatever, I'll level my my 70 on Benediction, but I'll start an alt, and they have a blast. And they're like, you know what? I'm having more fun on this fresh start realm because it does well. Then they're like, you know what I can do? I can transfer in my alt from Benediction now. And hypothetically, you're one of 30,000, or if Wrath is super successful, you're one of 40,000, raiders on Benediction. You can transfer on to this other realm, and if it does well, maybe it's not as large, but maybe it's 10,000. You can have a little bit of that, big fish in a small pond, or you can bring over your Swift Zulian Tiger and be like, yeah, there's only like 3 people on the server with this thing, even though you just got it running Zul'Gurub in Classic. That's the kind of people I think that would be, the people that would transfer to those fresh start realms, and they would gain real advantage from it.
Well, my idea of why people would transfer over, if you transfer over a character with as much gold as you can, you go over there, you wait until people start doing content and everything, you gather up, you buy all of the cheap twink gear, really cheap mats and everything, and then you take that character after you've used all that gold, and you go back to the big servers. You sell all that for 10, 20 times what it's worth in that small server. Then you can retake that character back, and you can. So the gold is so inflated in the mega servers that you can sell less gold. You can sell less gold for more in those smaller servers because it goes further because there's not as much gold.
Well, let's mention some of the restrictions that I'm sure some people listening might be yelling at their phones already if they're listening at home. But just to get some of the facts out there about, like, as you guys you just alluded to, Actreve, and as you other guys have talked about as well, like, there are restrictions. There's a I believe it's a 5,000 gold limit on a transfer. So people go, oh, someone's going to bring 100k gold over. Well, no, they can't. Blizzard did address that some time ago. But as you guys say, there are obvious workarounds, and Actreve has just started talking about that as well. You could potentially just fill your bags with a bunch of high value items and then go and sell them on a new server. Yeah, and the counter to that is always, yeah, but Josh, I mean, it's a fresh server. There's obviously not as much gold floating around in the economy. They're going to get, cents on the dollar for what they could have got them for on the mega server. Why would they do that? Well, it's still obviously valuable to the people on that small server, and there's still gold to be sold and what have you. The other restrictions are things like you say, you can only take so many items as well. Well, you can still take multiple characters, can't you? So as Manny, I believe, mentioned, with the idea of taking professional alts over as well, take as many alts as you want over to the new server, fill all of their bags with all the herbalism mats, all the mining mats, all the rare items, blah, 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 load up this server with stuff that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to, and Bob's your uncle. Another thing to consider is that given that we've already been told the timing of, like, well, look, as we just said, Wrath's coming in a few months, and then the transfers will be available a few months after that, at least, at a minimum. I get it. I hate that I have to keep throwing in that caveat, but you know what I mean. That's still absolutely and transparently conveyed a timeline to people like botters and gold sellers and whatnot, or people who are, whales who are interested in being the big fish in the small pond, as you guys have mentioned, and they might go, aha, well, now I've got the timeline before me. I can transfer. This is not many people might want to do this, don't get me wrong, but the option is still there. I can transfer to a dead server that I know they're closing on August 9th. I could absolutely suck the land dry on that dead server. I could then take my free transfer to whatever server I go from there, and then wait for the paid transfer to the Fresh Wrath server and fucking go all Scrooge McDuck on everyone. Guys, again, I'm just spewing shit out. Anyone have anything to say on that?
I mean, like, if there's not that many people that want to take those transfers, and I think there's a decent amount of people that would, or one person that might transfer multiple characters, whatever. Even if there's not very many people that would, it's like, who would do it? Just don't allow it anyway, Then you're not even inconveniencing that many people. I think the integrity or the fidelity of these new fresh servers is more important than the few people who might be willing to transfer to these new fresh start servers from existing ones. And they've talked about the population and stuff like that. Like, we've seen it time and time again with all these existing classic realms. No one's transferring from a higher pop realm to a lower pop realm in the hopes of saving the population, of saving the realm itself. If the server is doing great, no need for transfers at all in. If the server's not doing well, no one's going to transfer in anyway. So just don't allow it.
Yeah, and to dig in on this one, sorry, Joanna and Actrive, I'll get you to jump in after I just say this piece, because we're still kind of focusing in here on this very initial point of forget time windows of when you might allow a transfer and minimum periods of time that have to pass and all of that shit. The initial question is whether you allow transfers at all at any stage of the life cycle of this fucking fresh server. So Blizzard has trumpeted out the answer that, well, you know, and I should say, after the initial blue post announcing this news, shit hit the fan amongst the community. Everyone was up in arms about this 90-day window that was very specifically mentioned in that first post. Then Blizzard kind of came back. We had a follow-up post from a Grend who was a very in-depth clarification of Kyvax's initial post. Then I think we had another follow-up after that one. I'm not sure, but there's been a bit said after the initial post from Blizzard. I'll come to it soon, but kind of cleaning up the mess and the drafting of that first post, because people, as I say, shit hit the fan. But whether or not you have a transfer at all, Blizzard's like, well, we want people to be able to play with their friends. Blizzard historically, yes, is generally very opposed to, as we know, the locking off of servers and putting any form of restrictions on creating characters on a server or being able to obviously pay for the privilege of being able to freely, you know, move your character around wherever you want to play with mates. That's always been their reasoning, and it's a very fucking nice and easy one to throw out there. We're the good guys. We just want you to play with your friends, you know, and bring money. I hate this reasoning. I really, really do, particularly just in regards to this fresh realm, because Blizzard says, look, guys, you might have a friend that plays World of Warcraft Classic at the moment. We want you to freely be able to link up with that person at some point in time so that you guys can enjoy the game together. Now, a long time ago, I remember watching a Kevin Jordan stream who it really stuck with me, his answer to this kind of situation. And I think it's just as pertinent now as it ever was, where we talk about why friends play games with each other and what they'll do in order to be able to link up with each other. And if a fresh server is rolling out soon and a new player is coming to the game and they call up their buddy and they go, hey, dude, Wrath of the Lich King Classic is coming, and oh my god, they just announced a fresh server. This is perfect for me. I can get involved. We can play together. This is going to be brilliant. And then their friend on the other end of the line says, oh, well, this is awkward. I have an established character on a server that I don't want to abandon. You're shit out of luck, buddy. I just get to a scenario where one friend won't play with another unless they can transfer. It just always seems strange to me because I feel like friends go, oh, fucking that's sick, mate. I'll roll a fresh character with you. We'll go start a new adventure and this will be wild. It'll be beautiful. As opposed to, no, I won't play with you for 3 months and you do your own thing and then I'll link up with you later. Those aren't the kind of friends that are going to play with each other anyway. Again, guys, sorry, I'm getting all worked up here. Do you know what I mean? Does that argument hold any water for you in terms of their reasoning of, oh, it gets the friends together?
I think your argument is exactly what I've been thinking. And anecdotally, that's like kind of what I'm doing. I play Season Mastery with a European guild, and they have not played TBC at all, but they want to play Wrath. And so they started leveling on an EU TBC realm. And then as soon as they announced Fresh, the whole guild was basically like, oh, well, we don't need to level on this like established realm. Why don't we just start fresh together? And like some of them did have like 60s or 70s on that realm. And basically everyone has agreed like, oh, well, if it means us playing together, then yes, we'll go play the fresh. Like that makes the most sense because we're friends and we want to play this game together. And I think that, yeah, you hit it on the nose. I don't know why someone who wants to play the game with their friend who is starting fresh would not just say, hey, I can devote a few hours of my playtime to like doing this fresh experience with you because one, fresh is awesome. And two, that means we just get to play with each other from the start. And I don't have to wait for some unknown amount of time to then transfer to play with you when, who knows what situation they're in where they're just willing to up and leave their established server to go play with a friend like this. You have to jump through so many hoops for it to make sense to allow these transfers.
That's
and
right.
That's what's super annoying.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, just to double down, sorry, Actreve, I'll throw it to you in a second, mate. I'm picking up some steam here, and I've stretched, and I'm getting angry, man. So you guys have just got to listen to a little bit more verbal diarrhea. Sorry. Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, Duranosaur, because that exactly leads into helping to answer this question of why do we have transfers at all then? And as you guys have rightfully questioned, doesn't it just throw the integrity of the server kind of under the bus from the outset? I agree that it does. And it's such an odd thing where I mentioned on the show a few episodes ago where I'm starting to feel a little bit more uncomfortable about Wrath and about the classic franchise and Wrath and Blizzard and the ways in which I described at the time as being, I feel like I can, see the pig pen being built and constructed around me now that really funnels me towards all these purchases they want me to make. And the other analogy I've gone with is I feel like Neo in the final scene of The Matrix, where I can see the ones and zeros now of the world, but they're dollar signs. And I can really understand how they build these monetization schemes and how the little tweaks that they make to really encourage and push people towards just, spending more and more money. And it's so blatantly obvious to me now how much money the boost and the character transfers and the bot accounts have been making for them through WoW Classic's lifetime, that they would throw that integrity of a fresh server under the bus immediately because of the lucrative nature of all the shit that comes with it. At least 90 days in, we will consider allowing character boosts, character transfers, and all that crap. Because, and people say, well, Josh, like you guys said, how many players would actually want to go to these fresh servers? Obviously, they have the data enough that they feel it's well worth their while to almost declare these servers dead on fucking arrival because of the fucking cash. They are swimming in it with boosts and character transfers. And like I said, last episode of the show, the bot accounts are the perfect customer for Blizzard. They are the golden children of Classic in Blizzard's eyes because they never stop fucking paying their monthly subs. They buy copious amounts of boosts that pay themselves off in the money that they're earning back on selling gold. And they don't complain, basically. They're these perfect silent customers, and Blizzard is doing everything in their power and bending over backwards to cater the game to get more and more of them involved. Oh, we'll do a ban wave here and there to make it look, externally like we're actually addressing the problem. We all fucking know what's going on. I'm getting on a fucking roll. My question for Actreve, I'll throw it to you. I'll throw it to you this way. In allowing these transfers and let's talk about the boost a little bit, Actreve. Not just having a character transfer available after at least 90 days on a fresh realm, but also bringing along the boost as well. Does that sort of add insult to injury for you?
That's salt and lime and rust in the wound, to be honest. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It takes the fresh experience and everything and then just lets the Diablo Immortal people come in and buy their way to the top.
All right. You other guys, anything? I'm in a fugue-like state here. I'm getting a bit wound up. Anything that I've said that you wanted to pile on? Or contradict?
I could rant about the boost for hours. That's something that I think people aren't talking about enough.
Oh, let's
is
do
the
it.
boost.
Let's do
People
it.
are
Let's go
focused
down
on the
that avenue.
transfers, and those are obviously extremely important. But the boost, I think, is even more insidious here. Their clarification post actually doesn't mention the boost at all, as well, which I found interesting because they said, transfers at least 90 days. That makes me think, the skeptic in me makes me think that regardless, the boost is being implemented on day 91, even if they don't implement transfers then. But that's the thing with the boost, like, it's the salt and the lime and the rust and the wound, because it is so antithetical to a fresh realm. And if you look back at their blue post when they announced the original boost, it was so people don't feel left behind, so they can play with their friends. That's what the fresh realm is supposed to do. You can't have both the fresh realm and the boost. They accomplish the same purpose. We've all seen it. Anyone with eyes and two brain cells to rub together knows that the bots are the ones that have used the boost the most. Like, a ton of players have used it as well, but it's the bots that have used it the most. And that's where I'm really worried for the Fresh Realms. During the initial stage, there's going to be a ton of people out in the world. Bots who are leveling are fairly easy to identify by the players. Blizzard seems to rely basically only on player reports for banning bots. So a lot of those bots are going to get reported and they're going to get banned. You introduce the boost, those bots can go straight into dungeons. They're not going to get caught. People can see them in /who, but it's an extra hoop for people to jump through to /who and then report a bot. They're very slow to ban them. As far as I'm concerned, if they add, and this is my, I guess, lukewarm take, if they add the boost to these fresh servers, that's basically a direct endorsement by Blizzard of botting and gold selling on these fresh realms.
Just to pick up the ball a little bit on the boost point real quick, it's tangential, but still very core to what we're talking about, Manny. You're right to raise this. Really quick on where are we now? When was the boost first announced? With TBC, June 1 of 2021, right? So we're just over the 12-month anniversary of the boost in the Classic franchise. And it's no time like the present, I guess, to kind of reflect on the last year and think about where the boost has brought us. And I said famously on the show, I was fucking done talking about the boost. It was such a vitriolic subject when it came out. I went ballistic on it back in the day. I got tired of arguing with people. It just created so much venom amongst the community. I walked away and said I would never talk about it again. I'm fucking done. Ale and I went on Snow's podcast, had a discussion with him about it. He was very positive about the boost. Ale and I were very negative about the boost. And it was funny because I check in with Snow's podcast every now and again. And, they mentioned on their show about 6 to 8 weeks ago, they had a little bit of a revision themselves on looking back on the boost. Was it a good decision or not? And they mentioned that, they had their chat with Ale and I found it fun that they kind of said, without us being there, oh, well, we declare victory in that argument. I think, Snow was like, oh, I definitely think that, the boost was a good thing and there's not much more to be said about that, end of story. And I was like, well, that's an easy thing to say when the other party isn't in the room. So let's do something similar now. And I just sort of say that in my personal assessment, I look back on the last 12 months and it's a two-pronged argument where you go, yeah, sure, we can all understand that the boost has been very productive for people looking to skip the queue, and skip the hours of work put into a character, and the quality of life that it's brought players, in their thousands around the world is absolutely something that can't be understated. The boost has been sold en masse. People have saved hundreds of thousands to millions of hours of leveling, and it's brought a lot of expedited quality of life. That's great. I don't doubt that that's positive for players. However, I think that the negative that it's brought into what is now the marching forward of the WoW Classic franchise is absolutely palatable. I've fucked up that word. You know what I mean? It's tangible. It's obvious. It's right there. It's ever present. This was, as people may be forewarned when the boost first came, the first step in, testing the waters for what we might call, microtransactions and how much will classic players play to further enjoy their game. And we're seeing more and more of that now. And I just think that the change in climate that the boost brought to the franchise was such a change and shift in gear that the game kind of hasn't been the same since. Now, I know Classic was a bit weird, but I just think the boost really, accelerated things into weirdness territory. And, the boost came and then GDKPs went fucking wild in TBC as the boost came and all of this shit. And everything just feels a little bit different to me. So in my personal assessment, I still don't think the boost was a good thing for the game. Might be good for the player, but it's not good for the game, if you guys know what I'm saying. Now, I also want to say this, guys. I haven't said this on the show. Relatively recently, a couple of months ago, I'll throw myself under the bus. I fucking bought one. I caved. I felt like shit. I bought one. I did it. I fell victim to the seduction of the boost. I fucking hate myself for it, but yeah, I did it, okay? And it's just one of those things where I was like, fuck, I have leveled 7 characters by hand to fucking 70. I don't think I can do it again. I'm just buying a fucking boost. And I did it. So there, I'm the bad guy too. I said I'd never do it, and I broke my own rules, and I feel fucking dirty. But that's how they get you, I guess. I didn't have to buy it, but I did. Again.
But here's the thing,
Yeah,
Josh.
go, mate.
Like, would you... Like, I guarantee that you would be happy if it was never a thing and you did have to level that extra character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I leveled fucking 7 because I love leveling.
Yeah. And I think that that's the piece that's like, it's going to be impossible to ever really get to the bottom of it, because it's like, how many of the people who bought boosts would have kept playing the game and still played it as much as they do now if the boost was never there? Like, because I'm one of those people too, right? Like, I think I don't like the boost. I don't like that they added it, but I've used it because if you put it in the game and I can pay a small amount of money and skip some time, right? Like, if it's easy to just look at like, how many hours is it going to take for me to like get that character to 58? Okay, well, I can save a bunch of that time and make it up by just buying this boost. But I would have been also totally happy if it never existed and I did have to do that leveling.
I don't understand the boost. It's like you pay to skip the game. Like, when did playing the game become such a chore you would pay money to skip it?
I know. I think the argument is, as the reasoning that I just gave, Actrieve, is not that everyone who's buying the boost is giving this particular reasoning, but all I can say is anecdotally from my situation, and so many Classic players have played the game for so long, being at private servers or over the course of Classic, and if you have leveled multiple alts, all I can give is my reasoning was I had just done it 6 or 7 times in the last 2 years. And the concept, when I went to create a new character, I was like, oh, I want a fucking shaman or whatever. When I sat down and really had to think about doing the leveling journey again, when I've just done it so many times in recent memory, I went, oh, maybe this time I could just skip Azeroth and go straight to Outland. And that's why I personally did it. I would think that reason is probably shared by a bunch of players. But I agree with you, Actrieve, that you're right, that the leveling experience is a lot of the game. It's a lot of the fun. And I just, after I bought the boost, I leveled another fucking character. You guys have been watching on stream. I've hand leveled another paladin. I rolled on a new server, went Alliance, went human, went paladin, and played it all by hand up. I'm level 67, I dinged the other night. I started that character 6 weeks ago, and I've had the best fucking time. Leveling in WoW is one of the greatest gaming experiences in the fucking land. I've said that for some time. But yeah, you got me, they got me on the wrong day in the wrong mood, and I went, fuck it, I'll just buy it.
Yeah, it's important to consider that, though, the people that have used the boost within the greater context of the game, like you use it, like 2.5 years into the lifespan of the game on your 7th alt. This is like, we're talking about the boost on fresh servers here. This is for, if you're 90 days in, how many is going to be your 7th alt? It's only 90 days in. It's not 2.5 years in. I think that the boost is in a completely different context on a fresh server. And like, I can't believe that they're using the exact same reason for the the new start realms that they're using for the boost, and then they're going to have both on the same realm.
Guys,
But it's not a surprise.
Sorry, go, mate.
It's not a surprise that they're doing it. You know, they got to make their bloody expense reports or whatever look great for the shareholders.
Guys, it's not a surprise, but I think, as someone who's very interested in these fresh start realms, I think it's important to have a conversation like this to hopefully, give them the best chance at success.
Let's get into a point that I was going here next, North. I'm glad you raised this. And hello, mate. How are you, North? I'm not sure if you're itching to get in here or not. I might, if you did happen to want to get on the call, I might save you till later, or you might just be chilling and listening at home. Let me know in chat, mate, what you kind of, where your head's at. But I do want to pick up on a point that you just made. North is sort of, screaming at us going, they've said, Josh, that they want to keep these servers as healthy as possible regarding their ecosystem. And yes, Blizzard in these clarification follow-up blue posts has absolutely doubled down on the like, whoa. Hey, guys, don't get us all fucked up. We know these servers are important. We know they need to be kept pristine. We will do our absolute best to keep them in a very healthy state. We share your concerns. We understand you, is what they had to say via these follow-up posts. Now, my initial reaction to that was, okay, but let's really, and again, this is my weird bugaboo being sort of a writer, a communicator, and a lawyer myself, was like, let's talk about the initial drafting of that first blue post, which is Kyvax's post. And, I take great issue with the way it's written, quite frankly, because you have very, very specifically mentioned a time window being 90 days, right? It was preceded by the soft caveat, at least. And he said, after at least 90 days, maybe then transfers will come. The problem is you've loaded up a soft and a heavy statement side by side. So like I said, the soft caveat of at least with the hard figure of 90 days. Don't be fucking surprised when the community zeroes in on that 90-day figure. And I really, really cracked the shits when I saw in the content creator Discord, I'm not a huge fan of Tally, but he jumped up and brought this point up in the content creator Discord and said, hey guys, Blizzard, this 90-day thing, like, this is no good. What's going on? And I thought he was right to raise that. This is obviously a big concern. A lot of people are talking about it. I didn't appreciate sort of saying, look, whether it was tongue-in-cheek or not, this is so hard to tell with text, but, Kyvax obviously wrote the initial post, and Kyvax jumps in and says, well, I shouldn't put on a fucking, a dickhead accent. I'll just say it.
We all want to hear it. We all want to hear it.
Well, all he said was, I said at least. And I didn't appreciate that because I interpreted that as the classic gamer clapback of, how's your fucking reading comprehension? Which is one of the worst comebacks that you see so fucking often amongst gamers. Reading comprehension. But that was the implication behind Kyvax's response to me, where he's like, I said at least 90 days. Yes, we all read that, but you said 90 days for a very fucking specific reason. Sorry, Joanna, you go. I'm going a bit, getting a bit heated.
Just like, you're exactly right. If they had any thought that it would be longer than 90 days, then they wouldn't have put 90 days. If they had this thought that, 90 days in seems like a reasonable figure for us to, implement this, then they put 90 days. Like, it doesn't make any sense for them to put in an exact time frame and then to backtrack on it and say, well, we did have this, like, this statement beforehand that, sort of absolves us of any hard set date. That doesn't make any sense. If you didn't want people to read into it, then you shouldn't have put any date whatsoever. You should have just said, hey, somewhere down the line, we might do this, because that would have also given them the same amount of backlash, except then they could say what they're saying now.
Agreed. Completely agreed. And right now, we are getting that walking back, and we are getting that like, whoa, slight sort of changing of the song of it, like, guys, baby, please put the pitchforks down, you know? It could be 90 days. It could be 120 days. It could be fucking 1 year. Just, you know, read the fine print at least. We didn't settle on a date. I think Agrend worded his clarification post very well, and cleaned up the mess quite well, but it still left that sort of funky smell under my nose of like, we all know what's going on here. And like you've said, Tyrannosaur, what kind of expectations are we set up for now? Because I, like you, Tyrannosaur, and many other players out there would completely expect that after that, you know, on the 91st day or whatever you might say, that these things come in. I think it's funny because Blizzard's dug themselves a little bit of a hole now in a weird way, in that if they did implement the boosts and the transfers on the 91st day, they've basically done exactly what we were all expecting, and they can't really win here. So it's almost in their best interest to be like, fuck, we worded that one badly. They're on to us. Maybe we do just wait 6 months now.
Yeah. I'm trying to read because I feel like North's just trying to play devil's advocate a little bit, because and we haven't really dove into this very much, but in a lot of their clarifying posts, they do allude to health of the server, right? Like these things, the boost, the character transfer, they keep saying that they're only things that they would consider based on the health of the server. And I think that maybe we talked about this a bit before North got here, specifically with the transfer, that I don't know about the boost being good for the health of the server. I think that, you know, we dove into how the boost is in like, it's in a vacuum is like kind of a bad thing, but I just don't see how either of these ever save a server. Like, in just in general speaking, like neither of these things are going to take a server that's dying or that's already dead and make it alive again.
You would just boost on an already established server.
My major issue with their initial blue post too is like, how many players are they scaring away with that? How many new players are looking at that and being like, oh, transfers, boosts, I don't know. And then, you know, how many of those players are reading up follow-up blue posts and listening to podcasts and reading Discords? There's probably some people here that just are not here, but that saw that initial blue post, saw how poorly it was worded, and were like, oh, well, maybe not then. And they've walked away. They've made up their mind. They're not going to play. And that's why I'm kind of, you know, I feel like they say in their follow-up blue post, you know, they want to be really careful with it because they are excited about how many new players are excited about the idea. But like, if you were actually taking that care with it, wouldn't you have taken that care initially?
I've just thrown out the invitation to North. Here he is. Thank you so much. North, can you hear me, mate?
Well, I've been in the voice channel the whole time.
Beautiful, mate. I just threw out the invitation to join us after all, because you were putting out some more points in the Twitch chat, and I think they are important to voice, because I don't ever want to be accused of not giving both sides of the argument fair airtime. And obviously we've got four of us here, you know, fucking dogpiling on Blizzard and saying fuck them and fuck this and fuck you and blah blah blah. You are playing devil's advocate, and not necessarily playing devil's advocate. I'm of the belief that you are an advocate of what you're saying, and you're right in saying, I'll let you say it in your own words, obviously, but you know, you're right in saying that Blizzard has now on multiple occasions hammered home this point that the health of the server is at the forefront of their minds, and they've continuously reassured us via these blue posts, guys, we are monitoring the situation. Nothing has been done yet. We will see how healthy it is and then see if transfers might be required to upkeep the health of this server population-wise. So that's fair to say, mate. I'm paraphrasing you. Why don't I just let you say what you want to say?
Well, I think it's important to try and be fair where possible. Like, I get like why we're skeptical, like we should be, you know, like that makes sense. But I think that it begins to border on cynical, in ways that aren't super productive, right? Like, yes, the corporate interests of Blizzard will at times force very shitty decisions on the devs, right? Like, they will not be, do I think that it was the engineers and the designers that were like, oh, we really should go with 8 servers at the launch of Classic? Well, no, of course it wasn't, right? Like, it was requirements or sometimes oversights. Right, and they've largely grown and learned from these things, right? Like, they want to take a mind to, right, like, to reduce the number of servers, to try and curate the populations better, to make sure that these more free transfers are available, to try and balance out these servers. They've made efforts, right? Will they make it perfect every time? No. Does this guarantee Blizzard doesn't step in and try and sell the boost on day 93 instead of 91? No, it doesn't guarantee that none of these things will happen. It doesn't guarantee that no bad things will happen, but I think that, like, trying to ascribe malice to it when, right, like, the people that we interact with anyway, at least, like, we as a community are largely the people designing it, not the people who are lording over weird corporate bullshit, makes it kind of weird to sort of lop them in the same thing and blame them for it.
Oh no,
Right.
I separate just on that one, North. I obviously completely agree. We've said this, many times over the years, that we know that there is a difference between the decision making that gets done on the Classic team versus the decision making that gets done on the levels above them. Completely respect that in terms of monetization and everything. And this is why I said I'm being a weird little nerd here, because my specific shot at the Classic team in this particular instance is a drafting and wording, fucking thing.
No, and it's fair. Like, it does kind of, it definitely was a mistake. I don't think anyone's going to say, okay, this was worded perfectly, because it wasn't. It was worded pretty poorly, right? It was worded where people are going to focus on the 90, like, nothing that you can do, saying at least and trying to clap back on at least. No, everyone's going to read the 90 and be like, okay, this is probably what you guys are going to do, because this is mostly what happens. That's not cynical. That's not even skeptical. That's just pretty par for the course, right? They generally don't do that. And then the follow-up post I really liked. Yes, it may be them covering their asses, but it forced them to at least think about it, which maybe they just hadn't before, but which is a lot of the problems that I think that we have are just they didn't think about it, right? Like, they didn't fully think through, okay, like, is this really going to be an issue? And of course it'll be an issue if 90 days in server transfers are open and boosts are opened, because especially if they don't have the gold cap on transfers, re-added, which I doubt they'll re-add, right? It just completely floods these servers and you just have one guy buying up everything with a couple 100,000 gold. That's stupid. Right?
No,
like that's really dumb.
Sorry.
It's so dumb that, like, how are we going to think that they're going to do that?
Someone was going to jump in.
I was going to say that's kind of the initial reason why I reached out to Josh to jump on this call, was that their follow-up blue post where they talk about that they did hear feedback and they've seen the community talking about a lot. I think it's important to get into the nitty-gritty of why is this not good? Why are people annoyed? Because a lot of the discourse, when you see it on Reddit or you see it, it's just people being like, Blizzard bad, like 90 days is terrible, but then they don't talk about specific cases as to why.
Well, to get into that,
and I
Manny,
think they do read that stuff, and I think that, like, this is why a call like this is important.
Well, to get into that, Manny, North, if I can maybe start with you, and we'll go with everyone else, Actreve and Tyrannosaur, to piggyback off of what your answer might be. I was going to ask, ultimately, knowing everything that we know now, that, again, really, I will emphasize it for them, minimum at least 90 days, then transfers and boost will be considered for the health of the server. North, how would you rate the appeal on whatever sliding scale we use of this fresh server right now, knowing what we know?
Appeal of it just
the appeal of rolling on it. Would you want to play on it
with no chance of transfer on the table? Like, what are we comparing it to?
Well, I mean, compared to whatever you want, but as it is, there is a chance that transfers and boosts are coming in at some point, whenever that is, after 90 days. But it's a fresh server. Does it sell, anything to you on wanting to be there?
So very little for me is actually affected by, in terms of my desires, affected by the 90-day thing. Even if they said at most, if they said at most 90 days, it would fuck with it. If they said it's going to be 90 days and then boosts and transfers are open up, it would, on a 10-point scale, if I were interested in fresh, 10 times out of 10, which, is not unfair for me because I'm it's me, I'm a degenerate, right? Like, I have a problem, right? But
it's true.
that'd probably make it like an 8. Right, realistically, because I think that most of which is, might seem small in terms of a change. I think most important things happen on a fresh in the first 90 days. I think almost all the important things that happen in the first 90 days. And Fresh Wrath is, realistically not all that interesting. After the 90 days anyway, you're going to get the problem of bots. The bot problem will not be solved on this Fresh, and so the Fresh will ultimately be doomed to deteriorate just as much as other servers. The Wrath economy doesn't really hold up to modern day understandings of it, and so you have all these like weird mechanistic problems that are going to exist past 90 days regardless of whether or not you allow transfers in. So for me, it doesn't really matter that much. But the follow-up post of them being like, "Hey, we want to look at it, and we want to actually look at, we want to pay attention to it, along with all this other stuff that they have been making legitimate efforts to try and fix server problems in terms of community," actually probably makes me more likely to want to play. Realistically, I know that people are like, "Oh, it's just them covering." I don't think that it's them covering. I think that's like I don't think they would just straight up lie. Especially since it's a producer. It's not like it's not like a community. It's not just a PR thing. It was a producer that made that comment, and so I think that is legitimately important to them. I believe them, and maybe that makes me naive, but it makes me more likely to play the ultimate, like the totality of the interaction, where they then say, "Hey, we actually want to look at this if we think this will help," because it can help. There's certain situations in which Grobulus actually had a really bad problem when it was sealed off from the rest of the servers. Because you couldn't have any layers in Classic, if you remember, so actually my guild suffered a lot, and the Horde population suffered a lot because there was an imbalance towards Alliance that was getting worse and worse because a bunch of people had transferred right before it was sequestered. So actually opening transfers there from just Horde would have been exceptionally useful. And so if this Fresh ends up being imbalanced and you offer free transfers from some of the more populated servers with a gold cap, faction specifically, that could be really, really helpful to it. I don't think that's what we think of when they say, "Oh, transfers are open after 90 days, maybe." I don't think we think of that. I don't think we think of a very measured and intelligent approach, because they haven't really taken that up till now, but it looks like they're on the path towards maybe doing something like that. So as much as it is, me mainlining Black Tar Hopium, it's the way that I live, so.
We all know it. Joanna, let me ask you a similar question, mate. Look, there's some camps saying they are so excited for this Fresh Wrath server, it's going to be fucking brilliant. There's other camps saying, "Oh, I don't know, with now what we know, I could almost say it's DOA." How do you feel about the appeal of this server right now, knowing what we know personally?
I think it's hard to get past just like this hurdle that they've presented, that they created, that they didn't need to create. And it might be that, like what North is saying, that at 90 days or beyond 90 days, because of how far people get in 90 days on any Fresh version of WoW, that it's not going to be that impactful. And I don't know if that's what makes it so unappealing, like the actual measured impact of like a character boost or of like transfers to the server, so much as it seems like the type of thing that it would be easy for them to just either not have, or to have come out from the start and said, "We're just not going to have it unless we see that there's a problem with these servers, and then we are going to potentially take these steps and stuff," because they also don't have a track record of maintaining server balance or population at all, right? It's been an issue since phase 2 of Classic back in I guess like 2019, early 2020, where they haven't taken these steps. And so it's difficult for me to even consider them saying something along the lines of, "Well, we're going to watch them, we're going to baby these servers," because why did it take them this long to figure out that if they put in this extra effort, they might actually be able to maintain servers and maybe help them? So in the grand scheme of things, it makes everything feel worse about them. I think that North could totally be right, and we can come back here in 6 months and have a conversation about it, and maybe it doesn't really affect the servers. Maybe they do introduce those things, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really affect them whatsoever. But I think that the impact that it's currently having on the way that people just think about them is already not a nail in the coffin, but it's a massive blow to people that were on the fence about trying them.
Okay, Manny, if I can ask a similar question to you, mate, just knowing what we know now, how appealing is this Fresh server to you?
I've probably gone from, when you read the first sentence, gone from a 10 to maybe a 6. Like I'm still going to play it. I'm still going to be all in. I'm excited to try it. I think that it's going to lose some of its staying power if they do implement transfers and boosts, though, and that's what I'm worried about. And I'm also the main worry I have for transfers is ruining or affecting the achievements and the work that people put in as fresh characters on this realm. It's the economy will get ruined. There's like not allowing transfers isn't going to stop the economy from spiraling out of control at some point. But stuff like rare mounts or rare achievements, reputations, um, stuff like that. That's what I think really ruins the fidelity of the server if you allow transfers in, and that's what's taking my excitement down a notch. If they allow transfers in, even with a super low gold cap and BOP items only, to prevent people from bringing in massive amounts of items and gold and stuff like that. People transferring in with their stuff that they farmed over the course of 3 years versus the course of 90 days. It affects, the work and the achievements and the efforts of the people who are playing on Fresh.
Very good. You raised a point that I was going to use as our final point to bring it on home. But before we get there, Actreve, I'll ask you the same question and get you to weigh in last on this one. Personally, mate, how are you rating the appeal of this server now, knowing what you know?
Being a casual pleb, the boost and everything, the 90 days doesn't really worry me. I'm going to play it with my friends. They're going to play it. So peer pressure's gotten the better of me, being just a casual gamer.
Actually, very interesting question that's unique to you, Actree, for this one, that has had me thinking over the last few days. This fresh news actually has very large unspoken implications for the Oceanic community, because obviously we don't know how many fresh servers are arriving. Now, I've been very funny, and I'm going to be I'm probably already very unpopular amongst the Oceanic players as it is, but I've got some pretty hot takes when it comes to the Oceanic region. And when this news came up, I was very much of the opinion, and fuck, this is going to get me some hate, but I was like, the Oceanic region should not get a fresh server, which sounds fucking outrageous. I am completely aware of how ridiculous that sounds, and how insane it would make people, in anger at me. Josh, why would you rob us of a fucking fresh start? Why can't our part of the world get it? And obviously it comes down to a more nuanced argument about things like, region population and what effect it might have on the rest of our servers. Now, we've only got, half a dozen, 5 or 6 servers or whatever already in our region. I personally feel that, yeah, we've got Aragul there, the mega server that's much less of a mega server now than it was in recent times. But I personally think that it would decimate, well, not necessarily decimate, because we're not talking about this thing having like necessarily huge appeal, but it would take a chunk from our active servers right now to a point that I think, I said it might murder your Jamba. I'm not 100% sure. I said it would, it could have implications for even places like Aragul and Remulos, obviously, to the point that it waters down everything. And how many Oceanic players would you realistically get on a fresh Wrath server? We've just saw massive issues with Season of Mastery and the Oceanic region, where it was, one of the less talked about topics, because obviously Europe and America have their own things going on, but Oceania had the most mishandled situation with Season of Mastery ever. How do you feel? I mean, mate, you know what I'm like, mate. You can call me a fucking idiot. How do you feel about something as outrageous as a suggestion as rolling Oceanic players onto an NA server for this?
It's not a bad idea, I suppose, but you know that Blizzard's not going to do that. People are going to go onto the fresh server. It's going to take a lot of people away from the old servers. And in 90 days, you too can take your max level character to that server.
Or
money.
Or if we're not, right, if we entreat in good faith, after 90 days, the Australian server, the Oceanic server, it's not a success by Blizzard's measure. Doesn't make sense to have those things, doesn't really add enough, doesn't have a big enough population, and then they allow free transfers from that server to the NA server.
The problem,
On day
I'll
91.
jump in. The problem with that, North, is they did the exact same thing with Season of Mastery, where it was an
And it helped?
No. It actually murdered the whole scene in Oceania. So
for sure.
yeah.
But you do sacrifice the scene in Oceania for that. You have to.
No, but I'm saying the Oceanic players,
server to form.
like they barely went, because Jom Gabba was obviously the big Season of Mastery server. So when it was clear that things weren't working out in Oceania, and they go, all right, free transfers to Jom Gabba, there was a very, very small hardcore clique of Oceanic players sticking it out on the small Aussie, I shouldn't say Aussie, Oceanic server. But then when some people did transfer over to Jom Gabba, it completely murdered their own, the last guild that was still actually doing really well. We've had, the GM on the show, a friend of the show, Viri, who described that, they were hoping to have effectively a very small private server-like experience of this one guild only. They can be self-sustaining, the little commune doing their thing. But obviously people were tempted over by the free transfers to Jom Gabba and left, and everything just got blown up.
Well, I mean, maybe this sounds insensitive. I don't really, the interests of one guild versus the potential health of an entire product line, basically.
Oh, but it was
For
only
them-
one guild, basically. Like, they were the server, if you know what I mean.
Well,
Anyway,
I mean,
it's
then the fodder didn't want to continue to being like, yeah, for sure. It did mess with them, and if they were the server and if they wanted that tight knit community, that does kind of suck. But also that product offering was fucking terrible in the first place. So I don't really, I do have less sympathy because I think it's a terrible product. I think Psalm is really stupid. I think Psalm is a little confused about its identity, right? I think that there are like inherent contradictions within it that make it suboptimal. I will say,
Absolutely.
Let me be nice.
Yeah.
Let me be nice. So I have less sympathy about that because they're kind of just they're kind of just playing whatever at that point. Where like when it's when we playing Diablo Immortal, like I don't like it's just not a good game. I don't really so I care less about it. Perhaps I shouldn't. Perhaps that's insensitive. But
Anyway.
I can get back to your question.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
So being casual, if I was to play it on an American server, if there was no Oceanic servers, I would still play with my friends on that North American or whatever server that they decide to throw us on. I'd still do it.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to get all the hate mail from the Oceanic players about being a fucking idiot for even suggesting. This is going to be like the engineering thing, North. Josh, why do you even fucking suggest it? Now they'll fucking listen to you.
Makes sense. I think it makes.
I
I think it makes some degree
again.
of sense. You want to avoid the problems that your friend on his server in Psalm recently went through. That's a very reasonable way to go about it. Yeah, I mean, the on paper, what you're saying is a little, it's a little, like people might take you out back and throw you on the Barbie, right? Like that might be the risk that you begin to entreat with. But realistically, it makes sense why. Like you just don't want people to get and spend all this time and then just be, like immediately just like ripped from it. That's awful. Like that blows,
Guys, let's move on to the final point of this conversation. And I really just wanted to talk about something that you just, I think Manny raised in towards the end of his last point about, are these fresh servers inevitably just going to turn into what the current servers already are? This point has been raised a million times over Reddit, over the forums, blah, blah, blah.
Wait, did I get the wrong question? My final question on my screen is how hype is Dragonflight Fresh going to be? Are you sure that this the?
That's in the alternate interview we're doing after this one, mate.
Okay. My bad. Different script, I guess.
We're gonna anatomically break down the Drakthir and rate every body part on a sliding scale of 1 to 10. That
sounds hot.
Yeah, that'll get the
sliding
listeners
scale for the body part.
Yes, you get that as well. Exactly.
Okay, good.
Now, sort of what I'm getting at, guys, is like I said, it's a very popular opinion that you're seeing around the traps already. That whether you call it the doomers or not, or the realists, people are saying, look, let's be honest, with or without a transfer or a boost on these fresh servers, they are going to inevitably wind up at the same spot. Manny raised this point. Yes, they're beautiful and pristine and absolutely gorgeous. They're heaven at the start. But, we're inevitably going to see bots, gold selling, leading into GDKPs, North's favorite thing in the world that I don't want to get too bogged down into right now, and all of the madness that comes with what we're seeing on TBC servers right now. So, North, I'll start with you. We'll go down through the list. Is it any inevitability that this is just going to be like every other server, or is it some crazy chance that this is going to be the best fucking experience you could possibly get in Wrath Classic?
The GGKP will reign supreme on the new server. Oui, it is a very important part of the.
Is this your
anyway,
Peo impersonation?
What?
Swing and a miss. Anyway, yeah, I don't think that it'll matter after 90 days, realistically, because as much as we can go into the fucking GDKP thing if you want.
No, God, no. We spent 2 hours talking about it the other day.
But realistic, and I actually saw someone on Reddit. I saw someone on Reddit, like they were like, the problem's not with the GDKP, it's actually with the like the botting and the larger ecosystem behind it. And I literally saved the comment. I screenshotted it. Anyway, what Fresh has to offer is dead at 90 days. To be honest, right? Like it's not fully dead. It is not fully dead, but it will begin down the same path unless Blizzard takes the steps to prevent the problems that caused every other server to get to that place. Yes, they could theoretically. I think using the word inevitable. Yeah, I mean, probably 99.9%, right? But there's a 0.0000010 to the 50, negative 57th power 1% chance that Blizzard decides to start banning the bots and like actually have a good response to it and focus on the quality of their game over the money that they make. Could happen theoretically. In which case you wouldn't have the inevitable descent, right? You'd actually have some preservation of some of the more like, ancient Wrath dynamics where people would probably do a lot more dailies actually. And people would probably be a lot more invested in professions than they are now because it wouldn't just be automatic, right? Like, and a lot of the professions actually, the side professions anyway, fishing and cooking actually are very interesting the way they work in Wrath with the dailies. So I think that you could have it. You really could. It's not inevitable, I think, by any means. It's just that the 99.9 repeating chance is that Blizzard doesn't change anything about the bots because they haven't up till now, and they've made no real express interest in changing their behavior. Where for me with the server transfer, I think it's fair to point that out with server sort of server health as well. They haven't really changed a lot, and they did make these mistakes. Someone said phase 2. It wasn't even phase 2. It was literally weeks before launch. They were already fucking up the server architecture by the name res was ground zero for the fucking up of the servers. And they really haven't ever, done anything to fix it. But they've started taking the steps now, literally in the last month. Okay, they've started to at least talk about making steps to have it. So I think like having some goodwill there, there's a chance for it. The bots and stuff, no, not really. So realistically, it's a very long-winded way of saying it. But yeah, after 90 days, what do you get? Okay, you're just doing your PvE simulator anyway. Right, who cares? It's Wrath.
All right. Manny, same question. Hit me.
I think there's a chance that this is, I wouldn't call it, like a unicorn. I think it's going to have a lot of the same problems, but I think it's going to have more staying power than people think. But that's dependent on a few key points. I think people are underestimating the amount of Wrath babies out there who are looking for a fresh place to play and play through the whole expansion. And I think they're underestimating the amount of people who are dissatisfied with the current state of current servers who will roll on Fresh and get committed. And maybe it'll devolve and they'll still be, like the other servers, but then they'll already be committed to that server, so they'll keep playing on it. But that's contingent on Blizzard opening very few of these fresh servers, even if popularity explodes on launch. They just need to layer the ever-loving shit out of it, as much as I dislike layering, and let the fresh crowd bleed out until there's a healthy population left that persists. They can't get caught up and open, a new server and a new server and a new server. If, queues keep popping up, they need to just layer it and let as many people in as possible. I think that there's going to be a lot of people who haven't played that are interested in stuff like achievement hunting on a fresh server or getting some rare stuff, mounts, whatever, that will be sticking around on this server. I think that it's got a really good chance, but I think Blizzard needs to stick with what they said in their follow-up blue post, where they're going to take their time, they're going to take care, they have concern for people who are looking for an equal playing field, um, and that they ensure that the experience is like that. And if, call me an optimist, call me naive, if they're going to do that, then I think we need to return to the point of no boosts and no transfers. So other than that, I think my last point, if I can just address the doomers or the realists, as you might say, um, what do the doomers gain from shitting on the idea of a fresh server? I don't think they gain anything. I think that they need to take a step back and just let people have fun, because fresh at its core, all the people that love rolling on fresh, it's just fun. Fresh is fun, and I think there needs to be more fun for the sake of fun in gaming and in the world in general. So I guess that's my little outro on this.
No, I agree. I'm a fresh sucker as well, for sure. Actreve, your thoughts, mate?
What was the question again? Sorry.
Sorry, just in regards to whether or not you think that the fresh server will just wind up in the same state as the current servers or not.
It's a matter of time, absolutely. Every other server, if it's gained that following and the dedicated player base, it always will. It's the most effective thing. It's the most efficient thing. The GDKPs and all that. That's why people do it. It's our mentality to streamline and refine the processes of the most effective way to do things. Of like gamers of late, we just do it. It's just the thing, and not progressing to those things. It just seems inefficient, a waste of time, and our time is precious. So, short answer, yes, it will absolutely become the same thing.
Okay, Tyrannosaur, bring us home, mate.
I think that it's largely going to come down to the type of players that play on the server, and I guess the effort that they are willing to put in to keep it alive. Because I think it's been raised here that we're going to probably see those servers crowded with people that are Wrath babies, so to speak. There are people who maybe weren't that excited about Classic Vanilla or Classic TBC, and they're coming back for Wrath. I think it's also going to be crowded with people who really like Fresh. And those two crowds are not necessarily the most stable, I feel, when you talk about the longevity of a server. I think that a lot of people who like get really, really excited about Fresh are also the people who, once, you're a ways into the raid tier and all you're doing is raid logging, they just they quit the game. That's just what I've noticed from a lot of people who are very Fresh oriented. And I think it's also tough for the Wrath crowd, the people who are very excited about Wrath of the Lich King, to get organized enough and actually establish guilds and communities for these fresh servers before they start, because I think that's an important piece of it. I don't know how many guilds or groups of players are going to come to these servers. And without that, you're going to end up with, sort of a hodgepodge of all these different players that are going to get organized, obviously, because they're going to want to raid and do stuff together, but they're not going to have that established connection to one another. So when the time comes, if the population begins to hit a rough patch in any way, players are not going to have that intrinsic, I'm going to stay here because my guild's here. They may start looking to those mega servers and saying, well, I could transfer there at this point and I wouldn't really be that far behind because I've been playing the Fresh since day one, and I'm actually I have pretty good gear and all these things. So I think that it is going to be on those players, which may sound like a really obvious thing, but in my mind, it's how badly do those people who start out on the Fresh on day one want to see that server stay alive? And I think that kind of like what has been talked about, I think, in chat today with Grobulus, and we talked about it maybe a little bit, it's Blizzard doesn't do very much from what we have seen, and I don't think that we can expect them to do a ton, even if they are going to try to do more stuff. So it's going to come down to those players. And I have a hard time believing that group of players that are just coming back to play Wrath, or players that are really into fresh server launches, are going to be able to withstand time, and the inevitable loss of players and the breaking up of guilds, and the draw of going to those mega servers where you can find a guild, you can find dungeon groups, you can do all the things that you want to do, and never have to worry about, like, oh, are we going to, eventually die out here? So
I think it's also worth noting, maybe this is in contrast to what you've said, but I think it's worth noting, and I'm not even playing TBC right now, and I'm certainly not playing on Grobulus, but just because a server is balanced, I think it's much more likely that this fresh ends up balanced, more balanced than the other servers anyway. And then that if Blizzard, especially if they have their hand like in the weeds and they try really hard, that it could stay that way. I don't think that necessarily means that it'll be a good experience. Maybe it'll be a better experience, but like I think that Grobulus, even as it stands, I think Grobulus would benefited for a very long time from the Alliance being slightly more popular than the Horde, and that actually had like a really, really good balance for them initially. And once that fell out, it actually just so happened that because of this demographics of the server, the Alliance on that server, they actually were just bitches. Like they actually just couldn't hang. Right. And so you see like a weird trend with Grobulus going, having less and less Alliance now, and even that is swinging towards being more imbalanced than it was before. Actually, just because the players are not of a good quality, to be honest, and that's like a really weird thing to like qualify or even mention, but I think that that's an important thing to try and discuss. It's not just about the numbers; it is about actually the quality of the player as well. And I think that is a good point for like the fresh crowd. Is the fresh crowd does frequently just leave. So I think that at least having that in mind for an ecosystem is somewhat important.
I think that is kind of what I was trying to drill down to, is that it's the type of player, it's the individuals that are there that are going to make or break that server.
And even if it's right, like even if it's 50-50, right, if it just so happens that all of the like the Wrath, the people who are so interested in Wrath end up being opposed to the people who are all the fresh guys who are willing to do some heinous shit, like at Winter Grasp, and like are constantly camping people out in the world. If we're talking about a PvP server, right, like does that immediately spell doom for it because of just the kind of people it's going to attract? Maybe, right? Really, it's a very, very hard thing to control.
Guys, we'll wrap it up there. You've all been absolutely excellent. I can't thank you enough for putting your hands up and jumping in on this call on the fly. It started out as Manny and I, and these are my favorite calls, the calls that make this place feel like Cheers in a way. I've got me behind the bar, and then I guess North is our Norm and Joanna's our Woody. I don't know. It's the place where everyone knows your name, and we love people dropping by for a conversation. So I can't thank you guys enough. Look, take a quick moment now to please say whatever you want to say, plug who you want to plug, anything you want to plug, shout out anyone you want to shout out. North, I've seen you absolutely causing mayhem in the Everlook Discord lately. I've been reading every word of yours like a fucking lurker and just having a chuckle. How are you, mate? Anyone you want to shout out?
I've been trying very hard to be nice in there. Like
you've
I
been
haven't
very
cursing.
nice. No,
like
you've been
I have been people have been very angry with me too, because I like correct people. People like spewing random crap from like old memes from old private servers about like Grizzly bought all their BREs week 5, and I was like, the guild did not exist week 5. It had disbanded week 3. Like I don't like you literally just it just doesn't. None of that is true. Like we should focus on this and that.
I like the ones that delved into your love life as well.
Yeah,
that was weird.
the imaginary saga of North chasing e-girls that he didn't chase.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to shout out. I've been working. I don't know. I've been working with a friend in that Discord, and we actually started our own. Like it's just the two of us right now, but we're like going like piece by piece through everything that we think is good about vanilla and like the things that we need to change, and like trying to like we're deep diving vanilla right now, and we're we're trying to go through like each piece, what can be fixed, what shouldn't be fixed, right? What should be left in balance, maybe what could be changed. Like for instance, like world buffs. I think the best way to solve world buffs, and this is the one aside that I'll give, to encourage like in a Somm-like environment would to be make them undispellable, to prevent the death priest to dispel griefing, make summons of any kind, immediately destroy them, slightly increase their duration so that you don't have to it's not like as important for you to get summoned around. And then that way, right, it forces you to walk to raid together. You can't just get summoned everywhere, and you prevent the priest death griefing as an example. So if you want any updates on that, if you're interested in anything with that, you should follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, subscribe to North's to subscribe to North's newsletter on Twitter. Exactly.
Well, you can just DM, like my DMs are open if you ever want. Like if anyone wants to contribute to that, and thinks that they're that they're a vanilla brain, and they want to add to our little repository, just shoot me a DM.
Very good. Very good.
I'll slide in your DMs so you can fill my brain.
There you go. Spicy. Actreve, anyone you want to shout out, mate, before we go?
Yes, Josh, the spicy side of you that I saw today. More of that, please. That's what I want to shout out.
I've been called out in the past for when I get a little bit negative that listeners don't like it.
Really?
I was chuckling so hard.
Exactly. Your job is your daily job is, you got to think critical and everything. And I think it's good to see that you're very passionate about the thing. I think viewers need to understand that there's a lot of emotion to this game. We've all got a lot of emotion to it. And, seeing you get passionate about it makes me feel passionate about it too.
Mate, it's one of those things, like, just ask my wife. I am far more passionate and verbose about all of the classic issues behind closed doors than I am on the show. I really feel like my role on the show is just to play traffic cop and let you guys have your say, let the community have their say. My vitriolic shit, I just keep for myself at home. But it is fun to sort of flex it, out the opinions a little bit every now and again on the show. Look, if people do like it, like I said, it's not necessarily about it being negative, but if people are like, Josh, you should do that more often, let me know and I'll see what I can do. But yeah, in the past, whenever I've tried to sort of be funny or angry, people have been like, stop doing that. But yeah, mate, I'll take that opinion on board. Thank you.
Spin-off podcast?
Yeah, the long-awaited spin-off, our Frasier North.
Countdown to Doom.
Countdown to clashing.
Very good. Manny, mate, shout out. Oh, Manny, I should say, are you still playing with Lionface, mate?
No, not playing with Lionface anymore. They've actually haven't been raiding Sunwell, so I've been raiding in Sunwell with my shaman with a guild Tempo on Grobulus. North, just so you know, I noticed your dig at players on Grobulus. No, I don't have much to shout out. I just want people to take some time to have some pure, innocent fun and make an effort to not shit on other people's fun. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, North, you jerk.
Well, again, I said Somm was right. Like I said, it was stupid. I walked it back. It was confused. Okay, it's just drunk a little bit. Okay, we should, a couple waters, right? Like it can go home. It can lie down. It can fix itself. Not offensive.
Tyrannosaur, bring us home, mate. Look, shout out to Tyrannosaur and fuck North if you created content. Again, you get these shout outs as well. Please go and subscribe to Tyrannosaur's YouTube channel. He is kicking ass and taking names. I'm really enjoying the content he's putting out there. It is, I've literally said this to again, my wife the other day, Tyrannosaur, we love watching your stuff. And I was just like, I love that he does what he fucking wants. And it's not about algorithms. It's not about fucking, clickbait and playing the game. This guy just fucking enjoys the content. He has fun. He wants to entertain people and he does what he wants to do, which is something that I've always tried to do with this show as well. It's fucking, whatever pleases the system be damned. I want to make fun doing what I do. And it's so clear that you have fun doing it. And I just want to pat you on the back, mate, and say there's a lot of people out there, whether or not you're seeing it in comments and the numbers and everything, that really enjoy you for being you. And I'm just saying that we should move in together and adopt a small child sometime.
Thank you, Josh. That's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said about any of my stuff. So I will accept your offer to move in and adopt the small child.
Beautiful. That child may or may not be North, but we'll see how we go.
The caveat.
All good. Yeah, let people know where they can go to find you, Duran, or anyone you want to shout out.
Yeah, I still stream regularly at twitch.tv/DuranAsaur, DuranAsaur. You can also look me up on YouTube. I've been trying to do more YouTube stuff. Some of it's WoW related, some of it's me lifting or not quite lifting heavy weights. So that's been what I've been up to.
Absolutely. Bring a bit of fucking gym action to the WoW scene. I love it. All right, guys, look, I'll let you all go. It's been real. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Josh.
Thanks, brother.